All right, greetings everyone. My name is Jamal Walker. This is a podcast series called Can We Really Talk? NC. And we are discussing today the many faces of homelessness. The purpose of this video is to provide the greater public with a deeper look into the many ways people in our community experience homelessness. There are many factors and situations that people experience in life which can lead to homelessness. In this video series, we will spend time talking with our community members and listen to their stories about how they have experienced homelessness, what led up to their experience, and what they are doing to build new and improved lives for themselves. Additionally, we will be speaking with service providers who work with members of our community to assist them in addressing the many issues which contribute to the struggles they have with homelessness. It is our desire to assist our community members who experience homelessness in getting the help that they need in order to live life in good health and dignity. This video series should serve as a reminder that all members of our society deserve full membership in the communities in which they live. Everyone has a basic human right to food, clothing, shelter, and safety. We are all responsible for each other. With that, I'd like to introduce my guest today. This is Joe Naake from Hospitality House. And Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your position with Hospitality House, and what is your connection to helping people in our community who are experiencing homelessness?
Well, thanks for having me. So again, my name is Joe Naake. I am an outreach director with Hospitality House. A little bit of history kind of going back. So Hospitality House is a 24/7, 365-a-day shelter, the only one in Nevada County. When I first came on about 3.5 years ago, there was one street outreach position. That's what I was hired for. And the goal was to meet people where they're at, to go out into the community, meet people on the street, go out to the camps, offer services, and try to get people into the shelter and kind of reclaim a marginalized population that wasn't being served by the shelter itself. So over time, as I met more folks in the community, I learned their stories, and I learned that there was such a great need. I reported that back to the organization, and we decided we might need to get some more get some more help there. There's a lot of need out there. We opened a low barrier shelter. I want to say it was about 3 years ago. So historically, in order to get into Hospitality House, you had to be clean and sober. You couldn't have a pet. You came in, you breathalyzed, you drug tested, and if there was a bed available, you would go in and go upstairs. We were able to work out a deal with the county to turn our offices downstairs into what we call low barrier. We call it our outreach lawn. This means people can come as they are. It's 11 beds. It's its own dormitory. It's separate from the other shelter, from the upstairs shelter. So folks can come whether or not they were under the influence. It's completely behavioral based. And based on that need, we decided to hire another outreach position to kind of go out, because at that time, pre-COVID, people would leave the shelter and go out into the community during the day. And the idea was, we were going to uphold what we call our good neighbor policy. We were going to go around to businesses, making sure that folks weren't loitering in front of there, that there wasn't panhandling going on, there wasn't any kind of criminal activity, of course. We engaged with businesses as well as the clients that were in the field. So we got a good kind of idea of what was going on in the basin area, which is where what we call the basin up near Sutton, in Grass Valley, where the shelter is located. And we found a lot of outlying camps that were in the wooded areas. Based off of that, we found more need. So we got some more grants. We hired some more positions. Around this time, the county came to us with a collaboration known as the HOME team, the Homeless Outreach Medical Engagement Team, which I was the manager of, still am. And that collaboration was really unique in the fact that we had folks from Turning Point, we had folks from Hospitality House, and we had people from behavioral health all on the same team. On that team, we have a registered nurse that's able to go out and provide medical care right in the field. We have a substance use disorder counselor who can help people navigate into treatment, drug and alcohol treatment. We have a peer support, somebody with lived experience. And we have a couple of case managers, one specializing in housing, and just recently we hired another supervisor to kind of handle the day-to-day operations for caseloads and really provide intensive case management. So you've kind of got several different things going on here. You've got traditional street outreach where you're going out, meeting people where they're at. You're trying to just build relationships, build rapport, build trust with a system that, a lot of the folks out there feel that the system has, kind of failed them. So we build that trust at the initial engagement phase. We use a number of things, a number of tools. We use evidence-based practices, motivational interviewing, that sort of thing. The nurse has been a huge help because a lot of folks, when you're outdoors and you're not taking care of your medical needs, there's tick bites, there's wound care, there's all sorts of things to where if I go to somebody and I say, hey, you know what, I can see you're under the influence, or I think, there might be some mental health on board there. That's kind of later on down the line. We're really talking about meeting people's basic needs up front. A bottle of water, get them a meal, get them up to out of the sun, get them up to maybe Spirit Empowerment Center, and address their medical needs. And then you kind of build from there. We build cases from there. Are they connected with Medi-Cal? Are they connected with EBT? We talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They're basic stuff: shelter, food, water. So we address that. And as we build that trust and rapport, we kind of go upstream. We start addressing some of the underlying issues, whether it's intergenerational trauma, whether it's past trauma in their own lives, whether if they're a victim of some sort of crime or some sort of abuse out there, which does happen on the street. And then ultimately try to get them into either the shelter and ultimately get them into housing. That's the end goal of all this, is navigating people from the street through what we call our continuum of care into housing, getting all of the resources they need to be able to get back on their feet, get income, find employment, get into the shelter, do the job training courses, and really have case management provided for them to help them move through these very difficult systems.
That's wonderful. I really like that you mentioned the continuum of care. I think that there is a general sense, for people who aren't intimately connected with this issue of homelessness, where they think that the only thing that the county is doing or the different systems that are in place is to just give people free money so that they can have a place to live.
Right.
And I love that you talked about the continuum of care that's actually happening. All the different service providers that are working in concert, so to speak, all along the continuum to actually empower people to be able to live dignified lives.
And that's an excellent point. We talk about empowering, not enabling. Mm-hmm. I think, and I've had many conversations with many members of the community, homelessness as a topic is very polarizing. I hate to say it, but it's true. There's a lot of folks on one end of the spectrum that want to help everybody, and we should give everybody a house and get them off the street, and there should be more programs and more money ushered towards this thing. And then there's the other side of the spectrum that thinks that, well, if you build it, they will come, which I can tell you is false, or meaning that if you provide more services, you're going to attract people from outside communities, which I can speak to that. It doesn't happen. And on the other side of the coin, you have folks saying, well, we shouldn't be helping them. They should be helping themselves. So that's really what we're here to do: help people help themselves. If any one of us, you or I, or any of my family members, God forbid, had some mental health issues, for example, and they wanted to go and seek treatment through, let's say, behavioral health or Chapa Day or Western Sierra, there's a lot that goes into that. You go in, there's a lot of paperwork to fill out. You have to know, the times you do it. You have to be able to get transportation there. You have to be able to remember that you have that appointment, and then go into an actual building that can be very, very terrifying in some cases. Not that our systems are terrifying, but that's a lot to handle, especially if you're in a mental health crisis. If you're suffering from something like schizophrenia or schizoaffective, and you've got internal stimuli going on in voices, and you got some paranoia or even high anxiety, doing anything like that is hard to do on your own. Now put yourself in a place where you haven't eaten for several days. You don't know where you're going to sleep tomorrow. You don't know if your stuff's going to get stolen. That mental health treatment, though you may know you need it, might not be the most important thing right away. And even if all those things are taken care of, you still having somebody, a case manager or somebody from one of our organizations, being able to say, come on, I'm going to walk you through this and navigate through this very difficult system, and I'm going to be there to support you every step of the way. And the idea is that at some point they no longer need that case management. It's very progressive.
Thank you. Can you speak to this a little bit, Joe? We're calling this the many faces of homelessness. One of the things that I wanted to help bring across to our community is that there are many different things that lead to people finding themselves in a situation where they're homeless. Can you speak to that a little bit more about what are the different factors that come into play? When you've been out there in the field and you've worked with people over the last couple of years, what have you seen are the things, I know that we have some people who are dealing with generational homelessness, generational trauma, generational drug addiction, and that sort of thing. But that's one segment.
Right.
of the population. There are other people who, you know, come from all different walks of life and find themselves in different situations at a point in time that could land them in a situation of homelessness. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. I mean, I've seen studies and I've heard, I think we all probably know, a large portion of the country right now is one paycheck away from being homeless. If I lost my job tomorrow, you know, and I did, luckily for some of us and a lot of us, we have what we call, you know, we have social connectivity, we have social capital. So if I were to fall on hard times, I might be able to lean on a family member, a friend, in the short term to go from being homeless. A lot of the folks that we serve, you know, talking about the bucket of folks you were just talking about, have really destroyed a lot of relationships along the way because of mental health, because of substance use disorder, because of intergenerational trauma, or they never had a chance to begin with. There was never a college fund put aside. There were never, you know, the parents weren't forcing them to go to school or to eat properly. So that's one bucket of folks. And then you've got a myriad of other things. You know, if you lost your job and you didn't have, if you just moved to this community and you put all your chips in one basket and said, okay, I'm going to live here, and COVID hits, and now I'm working from home, or maybe I lost my job. Okay, now I don't have a source of income. Now I'm sitting there counting the days until the moratorium's lifted. Just recently, this week alone, one of my case managers, you know, anecdotally told me they've received 17 phone calls this week alone from people that are about to lose their place. You know, right now the housing market's blowing up, going through the roof. People are opting to sell or not renew leases as opposed to continue to rent to people. So that's the other side of the spectrum. And then everything in between. It could be an injury, an illness. We see a lot of that at Hospitality House. Somebody worked their whole life and they got sick, you know, COPD, they got cancer, something happened, and their retirement ran out, their savings ran out, and now they find themselves on our front doorstep. Veterans, you know, we see several veterans out there that maybe never got connected to benefits for a number of reasons. There's also a bucket of people that actually choose it. You know, we call them, they identify as home free, not homeless. Folks that enjoy the outdoors, they found a place in the woods where they can carve out their own little section of life. They don't have to pay taxes, they don't have to do this, they don't have to do that. And that there's a small population of that. And then anything else, I mean, I knew a guy, he hard worker, spent his life, you know, had a family, stand-up guy, a friend of mine, and he lost his job. The company sold. They actually splintered off, so he went and got another job at about half the rate he was making. Fell on hard financial times. That led to stress at home, which led to a divorce, which led to him, you know, kind of decompensating a little bit. And then before you knew it, he couldn't make rent anymore. And he's been out in the woods and camping and living on the street and couch surfing for several years now. So that's, you know, when you have all of your stuff together and you've had this life and you have it taken away from you gradually or all in one fell swoop, that's a shock to the psyche. You know, kind of coming out of that, it's very difficult. You know, I knew another gentleman, same thing. He was just a normal guy like you and me, got in a car accident. It was deemed it was his fault. He fell asleep behind the wheel, got sentenced to prison over it, because unfortunately the other gentleman that was in the accident died. You know, did several years in prison, came out, and now he's got nothing. Family's gone, friends gone, right to the street. I mean, I can go on and on. It touches everybody. Children, adults, white, black, all races, juveniles, veterans. It touches everybody. I could go on and on about that.
And I hear that there are several cases as well where there are, you know, women with children, as an example, you know, fleeing domestic abuse situations. Absolutely. And have nowhere to go. Lots of different issues that contribute to it.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, luckily we have a lot of really good things in our community here. We have a lot of really good service providers. What we lack in spades is capacity. You know, say somebody was fleeing domestic violence and they got connected to Communities Beyond Violence, and they were able to shelter them or motel them and kind of help them get back on their feet for a short period of time, if they're even willing to trust to take that service. Because if you're fleeing a domestic violence situation, you know, there's all that other stuff bubbles up. You're fearing for your freedom for yourself and your family. Sometimes hiding out in the woods or, you know, moving from place to place every day is a survival technique.
Very good. Thank you, Joe. So we've talked a little bit about this, but let's expound on it a bit. What do you see? What barriers do you see socially and economically which contribute to homelessness?
The big one right off the bat is housing in general. There's just not enough of it across the state, across the country. There's just not enough affordable housing. In this community, rents are very high. They're above market value in most cases, and vacancies are very low. There's not a lot of places that will take even if I had an 800 credit score at $50,000 in the bank account, and I went to rent a place or buy a place right now, I probably couldn't purchase a house because it's so expensive. And to rent a place for anywhere from $1,000 to, I've heard 4 bedrooms going up for as high as $4,000. And if you have a family, you're priced out of the market. And then affordable housing. What if I'm somebody who's an elderly individual who's living on Social Security? That's another bucket of people I didn't touch on. I make $950 a month, and I'm living on a subsidy, and my rent all of a sudden goes up to $800 a month. That leaves me $150 a month to live on. I can't live on that. I don't know about you. I mean, maybe if I ate top ramen every day, but that doesn't leave a whole lot for utilities, for gas in your vehicle, for medications, for some of the folks that have underlying medical issues. I mean, it goes on and on. I mean, so that's one main barrier, is just the housing in general. The county's doing a lot of great things. Other organizations are working together. We're trying to build capacity into the system. We hope to see some of that coming down the line, but that's the main barrier. The other barriers are everything we talked about before. Income. The job market right now with COVID kind of hit everybody. Right now, it's interesting because they have a lot of folks are choosing not to come back to work. They got used to getting a little bit of extra money of unemployment, staying at home, and now all that's going away. And now you get used to living on more money, and you got used to being at home and staying with your family, and now you're being asked to go back into the workforce. Well, now the community and people have learned to live under this COVID kind of era, and now it's switching again. So I mean, there's so many underlying issues. I can go on and on all day, but I mean, income, housing prices, capacity, all of those things, huge barriers.
Yeah, very good. So before we end, I think I'd just like for you to share a little bit about what you would like to see in our community and just as a community member. How would you like to see people, first of all, view this issue of homelessness, just from your own perspective, your own feelings, just being, a concerned member of the community? How would you like to see, a change in the way that we view what's going on with homelessness in our community?
I think the most important thing right out the gate is to realize we're talking about human beings. There's a lot of stigma around homelessness, underhoused, underserved, whatever you want to call it. There's a stigma around that for a myriad of reasons. So the first thing I would really like to see in a paradigm shift of kind of thinking is that we're talking about human beings. These are people that didn't come from the Bay Area, didn't come from LA, didn't come from New York to come here to be homeless. These people, most of our folks that we serve are born and bred here. They've been here for over 5 to 10 years, but I would say 80 to 85% of the people we serve are born and bred here. These are community members that do actually care about this community. The other piece that I'd really like to see is more of education, more stuff like this, bringing awareness to what's going on, what's being done, and how do we solve this problem together. One of the tremendous things I've seen happen, and you've seen this happen too in your role with Grass Valley Police Department, is kind of the melding of cultures across the board. Law enforcement, service providers, and community members coming together and really trying to be solution-based as opposed to problem-based. Law enforcement can't arrest their way out of this problem. We can't ship people to other communities because that's not ethical. This is a community problem. It's a nationwide problem for sure, but realize that this is our community. And added later to that, and I hear it a lot, is we live in a very beautiful place. You can see the foliage behind me, but the woods are beautiful. Our rivers and our lakes and our streams are gorgeous, and we live in a high fire danger zone. So education's key. Knowing that as a community, it's not us against them. The folks that live in these woods, that's their community as well. They know that at any time things can go sideways, and we could have another 49er fire. I mean, paradise is always in the back of everyone's minds. education, coming together, having discussions about it, and not, I can't tell you how many times I've met with community members that were just angry and fed up, and for good reason. I walk this trail every day, and there's always garbage on it, and people are going to burn down this place, and nobody's doing anything. And if I can take that time one-on-one to sit and have an hour-long conversation like this, or a half hour, even 15 minutes, and just kind of educate them, why are folks homeless? What are some of the barriers to housing? How does someone get in this predicament? And how ultimately can we help to move the needle and kind of solve this issue that affects everybody across the board? Whether you live in a $1 million mansion and you come to town and you see it, or if you live in the downtown area, no matter where you live in this community, I guarantee you've seen it. You have the choice of whether you ignore it or you get involved and you do something about it. I've chosen to, make this my life's work along with a lot of other really good people because they care. They care about the community. It's a need, and it needs to be done. And I think that kind of mentality of that community, that coming together. We've lived in the last 18 months to 2 years, and, for a very long time, in a place of division. All the way through, whether it's politics, whether it's COVID, whether it's, give it a name. There's been a lot of division throughout the country, and I've seen it in this community. I think that time's over. I think the time of healing's here. I think we need to come together, have open dialogues, and be creative. All the barriers I just said, I gave you a bunch of problems. How can we get creative in solutions? How do we create more houses? How do we create more units? If you have a granny unit, if you own a Airbnb, is there a way that you can help the solution? Is there some way that there's a way that not only you can earn income, but you could rent to people that might need that added support that comes along with the support of wraparound case management, that that if they have a housing choice voucher, that you're going to get your rent paid all the time. That's another huge thing we see is there's plenty of housing choice vouchers, but not a lot of landlords choose to take them. So that, is it really worth an extra couple $100s a month in rent as opposed to being able to house somebody that's out on the street? And what does that do for the community? And how does it start at home? How can you just individually do the next best thing, the next right thing, the next kind thing? That's really all. That's, I think, where it all starts.
Absolutely. Seems like we need more compassion and empathy for one another with all the situations that we're facing. I do want to go back to one thing before we end. You spoke a little bit about how law enforcement is affected, and I know that there are also some programs that we have happening now where law enforcement, our local law enforcement, specifically Grass Valley PD, is involved in really helping with this situation of homelessness. And can you speak to that a little bit and what they're doing and how they interface with Hospitality House?
Absolutely. So, when I came on and people before me, we've realized, as I mentioned earlier, it's a community-wide problem. Law enforcement is tasked with the homeless situation as well. And it's not a crime to be homeless. There's plenty of litigation. There's, Martin v. Boise, it's the right to rest. You can't arrest somebody for being homeless or having a mental illness. Prop 47 is, taking away felonies for people that suffer from drug and alcohol disorders. So we realize that. And law enforcement is now tasked with protecting and serving the same people we're serving. And we've identified that. So why not come together? So one of the pilot programs we did was called CalVIP. We have a case manager embedded with a law enforcement officer.
And what does CalVIP stand for again?
California Violence Intervention and Prevention. So the idea is a lot of our folks suffer from being attacked. 80 to 90% of our folks have been a victim of some sort of crime out there. So we're trying to mitigate for that. So we've embedded a case manager with a law enforcement officer. They're a wonderful team. Their job is to go out and proactively engage homeless individuals on the street, specifically geared towards homeless individuals. Whether it be quality of life issues, whether it be somebody that's being victimized out in a camp, whether it's somebody that just needs help. It's that initial engagement. And then they're able to navigate to places like the home team or other community resources. And I've heard nothing but positive feedback since it's come on board. Anecdotally, I just was speaking with another service provider where, in the past, if law enforcement was called, the first question that would be the answer would be, well, what crime is being committed? And in some instances, it's not that we need cuffs and badges and all of that. It's just that added layer of support. So in this instance, there was an individual who was being served an eviction notice, who was housed, but because of behavior and a bunch of other stuff, needed to be served. So the service provider was able to call that team and say, listen, I don't need you to do anything. I just need your presence there in case this person gets violent, in case it escalates. They went, served the notice. There was no incident. There was no use of force. It went swimmingly. And that's something, and that's just one small story of how, when we work together, that very easily could have went a different way if that service provider didn't have that backup and went out there, served the eviction notice, and now that person gets very angry, gets violent. Who knows what could have happened? Stuff like this, and when I hear this from other partners, it hits very close to home. There's also the mobile crisis team with the sheriff's department that focuses on mental health crises. They go out and engage with folks that might potentially have some mental health stuff going on. And that's, again, another therapist embedded with law enforcement that goes out and proactively engages the community. So we're starting to see this in our community. It happens in other states and other cities. It's very unique for it to happen in a rural town this small. We've also, Hospitality House wrote a curriculum alongside with law enforcement for POST, Peace Officer Standards Training, where we co-teach. You have a law enforcement officer and a social worker teaching about de-escalation, SB 11, mental health, teaching about what the homeless population looks like. Everything we just talked about, that's in the curriculum. And then, de-escalation of use of force. How do we best serve our community and educate everybody side by side, that melding of cultures, I like to say. So it's really fascinating. I'm hoping we do more of it. I'm just super excited about it.
Wonderful. Well, folks, thank you for taking the time to tune in. This is Can We Really Talk NC, and we are talking about the many faces of homelessness. And I want to thank you, Joe Naake, Program Director, Outreach Director?
Outreach Director, yeah.
Program Outreach Director for Hospitality
Just Joe's
House.
fine.
And so we're very excited that we have all of these different programs and entities working together in our community to continue to work on this, solving this issue of homelessness in our community. And as Joe mentioned, it's going to take all of us, concerned community members, people who work in these various fields and organizations, but it really is going to take all of us. We are responsible. Once again, we're all responsible for one another. So thank you for joining us. Joe, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much
and
for
I'll
having
see
me.
you around town, brother.
Definitely.
All right.